Welcome to the Edan Patient Monitor Inservice. This interactive training video will cover setting up Edan patient monitors, both the X series and the IM series. It's a good idea to pause and complete each process before moving forward. Let's start by sorting the accessory box into primary, ancillary, and disposable accessories. The primary accessories include 3 blood pressure cuffs, blood pressure hose, pulse oximeter sensor, ECG cable, and the power cord. The skin temperature probe and grounding cable are considered ancillary items and not generally utilized. However, if artifact appears on the ECG waveform, the grounding cable can be used to troubleshoot potential issues with electrical interference. Disposables include the CO2 water trap, various CO2 sampling lines, printer paper, and ECG electrodes. Before we begin setting up the accessories, pause and sort the accessories as shown. Battery installation. The battery can be found in the foam packaging underneath the accessory box. To install the battery in the IM series monitor, locate the battery door on the right side of the monitor. With the label facing up, hold the lever over and slide the battery into place. For the X series monitor, remove the back panel with the provided screwdriver and plug in the connector as shown. Place the battery in with the label side up. Once the battery is installed, plug in the monitor to power and press the round button on the bottom left to turn on the monitor. Pause to install the battery now. Blood pressure. Connect the blood pressure hose by firmly pushing the connector into the port labeled NIBP. NIBP stands for non-invasive blood pressure. The IM and X series have ports that are different on the monitor side. However, the blood pressure cuff connectors are compatible with both. In either case, firmly push the connectors into place and pull back on the collar to release. Pulse oximeter. Connect the pulse oximeter cable by lining up the arrows on the sensor plug to the arrows on the SpO2 port of the monitor. This is important to avoid damaging the pins. The clip-style sensor is the most widely used. However, there are other sensor options available. If you choose to use multiple types of sensors, an extension cable is recommended to prolong the life of your equipment. ECG cable. Connect the ECG cable to the clearly labeled port on the monitor. Although the monitor is equipped to handle 3-lead or 5-lead cables, generally a 3-lead cable is provided. The lead wires are clearly marked to indicate the area of placement. RA, or the white lead, is placed on the upper right side of the patient. LA, or the black lead, is placed on the upper left side. And finally, LL, or the red lead, is placed on the lower left side. Keep in mind that ECG pads, also known as electrodes, need to have sufficient amount of gel in order to function properly. If using from a bulk package, seal the package between each use. It is a good idea to connect the lead wires to the electrodes prior to placing them on the patient. Front monitor panel. The hard menu buttons on the front panel are indicated by icons and/or words. The first button to the right of power is mute. By default, mute will silence the current alarm for 120 seconds. As an example, silencing a heart rate alarm will not prevent an SpO2 alarm from being triggered. The mute button would need to be pushed again in order to silence the secondary alarm. Next is NIBP, or non-invasive blood pressure. This starts a blood pressure and will begin the interval cycle if the blood pressure is set to automatic. The same button can be used to interrupt a blood pressure. To the right of the NIBP button is Trend. Trend is used to view the trend of the case. This will be discussed further in the Trend Print section. Press the Freeze button and then Record to print a concise ECG waveform. It can also be used to view waveform history. The Record button prints a waveform with a complete patient information header. The waveform prints out according to the recorder setup menu. The X series monitor does not have a record button, however a shortcut can be added to the control bar. Finally, we have the menu button. This button is used to access the menu screen and also as a shortcut to exit all menus. Press the hard menu button to exit all menus quickly. Blood pressure setup. Enter the blood pressure setup menu by touching the blood pressure parameter area on the monitor screen. Recommended settings are shown here. Measure mode should be auto. Interval is typically set to 5 minutes. The interval setting will determine how often a blood pressure will be taken. Additionally, it's important that the inflation mode be set to auto and unit is mmHg in order to obtain an accurate blood pressure reading. ECG Setup. Enter ECG Setup by touching the HR parameter box. This should be to the right of the ECG waveform. The recommended settings are shown for each monitor version. Lead type should be set to 3 leads, display normal, filter surgery, smart lead off, calc lead 2, pace off. It is very important that the beat source is set to PR. Setting the beat source to PR will allow the pulse oximeter tone change to be heard. Optional adjustments include setting the ARR, ST analysis, and QT analysis to off. These are advanced arrhythmia analysis options that are not often utilized with a 3-lead ECG cable. CO2 Setup and Maintenance. Touch the CO2 parameter tile to enter CO2 Setup. Work mode should be measure unless CO2 is not being used. If CO2 will not be used, set work mode to standby. The setting below work mode is apnea alarm on the IM series or no RR detected on the X series. This can be set as high as 40 seconds. This is considered a high priority alarm and cannot be disabled. It's important to note when changing the water trap or the CO2 sampling line, implement zero calibration by touching zero calibration from the CO2 setup menu. This should be done before the line is placed on the patient. The system briefly displays zeroing in progress. These few seconds of calibration are important to prolong the life of the internal CO2 components. If the system displays breath detected or zero required, zeroing has failed. Zero calibration should be performed again. Remember, if CO2 is not reading, check the work mode to make sure it is set to measure. CO2 accessories. These include a water trap and multiple CO2 sampling options, straight sampling line, CO2 sampling cannula, and a divided CO2 sampling cannula. Let's determine which one will work best for you. Do you deliver oxygen through a nitrous hood? The nasal sampling cannula is used to monitor CO2 independent of oxygen delivery. However, if you are delivering oxygen through a nitrous hood, this is the most reliable method. Place the nasal sampling cannula on the patient in the same fashion as an oxygen cannula, and then place the nitrous hood on top of it. Another option is to tape in place just under the nostril the end of the straight sampling line. Alternatively, there are methods of modifying a nitrous hood to use a nitrous hood adapter as shown, or using a disposable adapter in line with the tubing. If you deliver oxygen through a cannula, a dual sampling cannula that allows delivery of oxygen and sampling the CO2 through the same cannula can be used. When the cannula is first removed from the package, it may appear that the line is all one piece. Pull the ends apart to separate the oxygen line from the CO2 sampling line. The line with the lure lock will attach to the monitor. The O2 port attaches to the oxygen source. Install the water trap on the bottom left side of the monitor by aligning the ports with the prongs on the monitor and snapping it securely in place. Secure the male lure lock of the CO2 line to the water trap. Touch the CO2 parameter square. Touch zero calibrate. Parameter setup. Press the hard menu button or touch menu on the control bar. Touch system setup. Touch Module switch. Choose which parameters will be monitored. The most common selections are ECG, NIVP, SpO2, CO2, and PR. When respiration is selected, it is reading from the ECG, which can result in false alarms if the leads are not properly placed or if the patient is moving. Respiration rate is being obtained from the EtCO2 reading and is referred to as AWRR, or airway respiration rate. Display setup. Press the hard menu button or menu on the control bar. Touch Display Setup. The default and recommended view selection is standard. Wave number should be set to 4 unless additional parameters are selected on the module switch. Control bar on enables on-screen shortcuts. Shortcut menu customization. Press the hard menu button or touch Menu on the screen. Touch Maintenance, touch User Maintain. The password is ABC. Then touch OK. Touch Shortcut Setup. Select the desired shortcuts. The recommendations are Admission, Trend Table, NIVP, Standby, and Record. Touching the arrow will scroll over to reveal more options. Alarm setup. All alarm settings, with the exception of the apnea alarm, can be set from a single screen. Touch a parameter tile on the right side of the screen. Touch Alarm Setup. Once in Alarm Setup, select the parameter to be adjusted. Then touch the alarm value and adjust with the arrows. On the right side, check the settings. Switch on indicates the alarm is on. Record should be set to off to avoid a waveform printout when an alarm is triggered. For CO2 and NIVP, there are multiple parameter alarms that need to be adjusted. Touch the pull-down arrow to the right of EtCO2 and choose the parameter to adjust. Date and time setup. Press or touch Menu, touch Maintenance, touch User Maintain, password ABC, then touch OK. Scroll to the bottom of the screen, touch Date and Time, set the date and time. Note, all X Series monitors and the IM Series version 2.0 have the option to choose between 12-hour and 24-hour format. Start a new patient. There are 3 options for starting a new patient: Admit and enter patient info, Quick Admit, and Admission. The first option is to admit and enter patient info. Press or touch Menu, touch Patient Setup, touch New Patient. A prompt will appear indicating the data will be erased from the previous patient if Yes is selected. The amount of information entered is optional. It will appear on the printout and the patient will be identified at the top of the monitor. The second option is Quick Admit. Press or touch Menu, touch Patient Setup, touch Quick Admit. A prompt will appear indicating that the data will be erased from the previous menu if Yes is selected. The third option is the most direct. Select Admission from the shortcut menu. This leads to the Quick Admit menu. Again, a prompt will appear indicating that the data will be erased from the previous patient if Yes is selected. Standby mode. Standby mode will interrupt monitoring without losing the current data. Option 1, press or touch Menu, touch Common Function, touch Standby. Option 2, touch Standby on the shortcut menu. Choosing Yes to change to standby mode will not affect patient data. To return to monitoring, simply touch the screen. Loading printer paper. The printer is a thermal printer, so it does not require ink. It does require thermal paper of a specific size that is not readily available at an office supply store. To load the printer paper, place the paper in the printer compartment and close the printer door on the paper. It is not necessary to feed the paper through the rollers. Troubleshooting printing. If your printer is not working, there are a few troubleshooting tips. Load the paper in the opposite direction. Typically, paper with grid is an underhand roll and solid paper is an overhand roll. Ensure that the paper is not fed through the roller. Lastly, double check the paper to make sure it is thermal. Recorder setup. Press or touch Menu, touch System Setup, touch recorder setup. Confirm settings as shown. The most important setting is record interval. It should be set to off. Waveforms will print continually if record interval is not set to off. There are two printout options: print out each time a blood pressure is taken and printing at the end. Option 1, print out at the end. This is the preferred method since it's the most concise and will use less paper. Press the Trend button or touch Trend Table on the shortcut menu. Touch the arrow to the right of interval and scroll to the bottom. Select NIBP, touch Record All again. Option 2, print out each time a blood pressure is taken. By default, Trigger Record is set to off. In order to print each time a blood pressure is taken, NIBP Trigger Record needs to be turned on. Press or touch Menu, touch Maintenance, touch User Maintain, Password ABC, touch OK. Touch Other Setups. Set NIBP Trigger Record to On if you choose to print each time a blood pressure is taken. Otherwise, leave this set to off. Data Store Setup. The newer versions as of 2022 have two options for storing data. Press or touch Menu, touch Common Function, touch Data Store. Touch the arrow to the right of Storage Medium to determine if your monitor is equipped with internal memory. If internal memory is an option, choose internal memory. If it is not equipped with internal memory, insert a USB memory thumb drive into the USB slot. The monitor will recognize the USB once you exit the data store menu and return. Please note, the thumb drive must be 4 GB or less and formatted to FAT32. Once inserted, press Menu, touch Common Function, touch Data Store, then choose the storage medium and/or storage device. You may be prompted for a password. The default password is ABC. It's important to note that data is not being stored unless the storage icon is being displayed. The information that is stored can be reviewed on the screen or printed. It is not designed to be transferred to a computer. To review the data stored on the USB or in the internal memory, press or touch Menu, touch Review, touch History Patient. Choose the patient information that you wish to review. While there are several options to choose from on the Review menu, the concise option is Trend Table. This will allow you to view and/or print all of the parameter data. Choose Trend Table, touch the arrow to the right of interval and scroll to the bottom. Select NIBP, touch Record All again. Once the settings are complete, it's a good idea to test the settings by putting the monitor into demo mode. Touch or press Menu, touch Common Function, touch Demo Mode, enter password 3045, then touch OK. To exit demo, turn off the monitor or touch Menu, Common Function, Demo Mode. Save the settings. This is an important step. Save the settings by following the instructions as shown for the specified monitor. The monitor will come back on with this default profile each time. If changes are made to your setup, you will want to follow this process again. However, when it asks for the name of a profile, enter the exact same profile name and you'll be prompted to overwrite the previous saved profile. The following pages include X-Series accessories, IM-Series accessories, disposable supplies, mounting options, along with instructions for obtaining service. In conclusion, if you are having issues with your monitor, the Edan support team is here to help. First, contact your distributor. Often they can troubleshoot a setting or help with a replacement accessory that can avoid sending your unit in for service. If the issue cannot be resolved, an Edan service tech can be contacted to reach you directly. If it is determined the unit needs to be sent in for service, there are loaners available upon request. The only cost for the loaner is shipping to and from your facility. Additionally, you can send an email to initiate a request for service to service@edansupport.com. Please include the model and serial number of the unit and your contact information. Thank you for purchasing an Edan patient monitor. The Edan support team is here to serve you.